As the dust settles, here in the great Americas, we watched as a former reality TV star, businessman, and real estate entrepreneur became the president-elect of the United States. The television glowed softly as I watched state after state fall to Trump. CNN analysts, whatever you want to call them, tried to spin the election as the country continued to become redder and redder. I flipped to Fox News, and the pundits, even there, were visibly in shock and in awe. They couldn't believe they were saying, President-elect? It looks like it's Donald Trump. I've never seen Fox News so docile in the face of their incumbent standing to gain victory of the highest office in the land. I went to bed crying, confused, saddened, ready to vomit all over the world as Donald Trump surely would become president this January. My brain hurts from the possibility of having to deal with a full red Congress and House and a red president. When I awoke, the news stood. President-elect would be Trump. And those on all major networks, they're still in shock. I listened to NPR for 2 days straight as they guessed what would happen next. They recalled their shock. They expressed their outrage. And yes, even the folks at NPR raised their normally calm voices. And they reported on the 100-day plan and Trump's cabinet. I had to tell my girls that they would have to wait for another female president, for that glass ceiling to be broken, because it didn't seem to be important enough to America at this moment. I had to talk to my sons about their responsibility to vote and to join the voice of Americans when it became their turn. I had to listen to colleagues gleefully congratulate themselves like they did anything, but they congratulate themselves with Trump's victory, and they talk about how things will only get better for them because they're the white majority there. This was not a fun week. This has been an emotional roller coaster, and it's not been easy. And while we here at Cellar Door Skeptics may not be shocked by Trump winning, we are shocked that enough Americans couldn't see the good in Clinton to overturn a beast who spoke about racism, hate, fear, and sexism. So this episode is dedicated to the death of America, folks. This episode here is dedicated to those who feel unsafe after this election. This episode is dedicated to all the hardworking people behind the scenes to ensure that we have a voice, that those out there will get to have their voices heard, even if it's for the opposition. Because this moment in time, I want to make it clear that here at Cellar Door Skeptics, we will continue to fight for equality. We will continue to stand behind the minorities. We will continue to fight sexism and racism. We will not sit down. We will not be quiet while the Trumpster takes over the White House. This moment is our dedication to continue to fight, to continue to support, to continue to help those who have been wounded by this election. We will not remain silent, and we will stand on the lines, and we will fight for the humanist values that we claim to hold. This moment of silence that you are about to hear is our show of solidarity in the calm before the storm.
Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. If you're just tuning in for the first time, that was our improved random segment to begin the show off. Welcome back. It's been a couple of trying days for Chris Hanna and I. We've been working very, very hard to try and get an episode out this week because we thought it was very important, very, very important to have this conversation. So welcome back. After a devastating week and increased coverage of President-elect Donald Trump, we're going to take our thoughts about the political results, along with his cabinet choices, how the votes turned out, and we're going to have that conversation. We're also going to talk about the Affordable Care Act tonight, because there's some reasons why the GOP don't support it. And Mr. Chris Hanna, who I can no longer joke about him voting for Trump, because I know he didn't. And it's not really funny anymore, to be honest with you.
It's not at all.
It was funny. It's definitely not. So we're gonna talk about the Affordable Care Act. We're going to talk about how the GOP has a hard time supporting it. And then we're going to close the show off with a look at 100 days of Trump in his presidency. And NPR has a great article that we're going to dive into that talks about what promises he has and if he can fulfill. But before we begin and before we get too far down the road, I want to thank our Patreon supporters, Alan and Denny, for everything that they've done. If you would like to join the ranks and sponsor the show on Patreon, please head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink per week, you can help sponsor the hosts and the charity of their choice. Patreon helps them create better content, become better activists, and will help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda a week. So coffee.
Yeah.
You ruined it. Sponsor us today for as little as $1 an episode, because we bring the discussion with the sources. You can also find our show right here on Spreaker, and you can follow us by subscribing for updates right on Spreaker, or you can head over to iTunes or Google Play and subscribe for automatic downloads of the Chris Squared Show every week.
We haven't said Chris Squared in a long time. We're bringing out some old stuff here.
I did. I got a little nostalgic. I had member berries. Remember?
Well,
I had a few member berries this week because sometimes there's not enough alcohol in my house to drown out what has happened.
Yeah, it's been a weird week. I've heard everyone's arguments from just kind of let it happen to we should be out in the streets screaming and yelling. I've had a bunch of people in my life in the last week. My father and I, my mother, we went to 3 funerals in 7 days. And
ooh, Jesus.
This week we took up a friend of ours, my father and I, up to the hunting to our cabin because he's been given 4 to 6 months to live, and it's been a few months already, but one of his last requests is to go hunting with the guys again. So, I mean, politics is important and democracy and everything. But it's been really a serious time in my life and my family's life lately. And so, I've kind of been watching everything a little bit from the back, just not really involved. And it's interesting to just get out of it for a minute and watch it happen. It's weird, one, because I want to get in there and yell and scream, but it's nice to sit back and just kind of see what's happening. I've been reading a lot and learning what's going on. We're going to talk a little bit about what the 100 days of Trump, what he's proposing, costs, and all that kind of stuff. But I've just been trying to learn about what his positions are and watching the disarray at the whole thing, because I don't think any of these people who are in charge right now, or at least pending in charge, had any idea that they were actually going to be doing what they're doing. I mean, it's just like a madhouse. Everybody's fighting and infighting and screaming and firing and hiring. It's been exciting to watch the chaos, really.
And you know one thing, Trump hasn't yelled, "You're fired."
I guarantee you he has. He
hasn't.
They
at least
fired
publicly.
all the lobbyists today, or Pence did at least. They said, because everybody said, well, Elizabeth Warren called out the Trump campaign and said they just filled it with lobbyists and Republican establishment people. So Pence came out and just said, "All the lobbyists are fired."
Oh, really? That's crazy.
Well, they kind of have to if they're going to hold true to the promises that they made. That's one of the things that's going to be great, is to hold Trump to the fire for all of his promises, because every promise he made is basically against everything the Republican majority in the Congress and the Senate want to do. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and we apologize to everybody. Life just happens to get in the way. We don't do this full time. Unfortunately, if you would like to sponsor us on Patreon, I'm sure we would love to do it full time, but unfortunately, we are not there in our lives.
We would need a millionaire to come to Patreon for us to do this full time.
No, we wouldn't. I don't need $1 million. I'm not Trump. I don't have to live in a golden tower.
No, but I mean someone willing to donate enough so that we could basically subvert our normal income with income for Cellar Door Skeptics. That would be an impressive donor.
Well, I can tell you right now, Hannah, I don't make $1 million a year.
No, but I'm talking about people that donated enough.
To
something. Like a millionaire donates 20 grand.
I see.
50 grand.
I see.
Because they get tax write-offs on it.
You lost me before. Anyway,
too many layers in that logic.
You're derailing the show. You're derailing the show, son. But in all seriousness, though, we have had a very trying week. My work has picked up, Hannah's has picked up, and on top of all the deaths in the family that he's had, we had to take a few days to decompress, regroup, so that we could come back with an amazing episode. And we do. We have a very positive episode planned for you. And we're going to be serious, because there's a couple of things we got to analyze. And before we get into the voter turnout, right, and we get into any of that, I kind of want to talk about a couple different things. So there's an article from Harvard Business Review that a friend of mine shared with me called "What So Many People Don't Get About the U.S. Working Class." And it kind of emulates, ironically enough. Now, I read this article before This American Life came out this week. And as I'm reading this, I'm sitting here going, okay, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. All right, I can see why people would vote for Trump. Okay, I can see this. And maybe, and before we get into the article, maybe, Handy, you could say, we could talk about this. Were we really that blinded? I don't know if I felt our podcast specifically thought Hillary was a shoo-in. I mean, we attacked Hillary for several episodes on several different positions she had.
I basically made the decision that I was going to support the opposing candidate for Donald Trump, because it was much clearer way earlier on that he was going to be the Republican presumptive nominee. And Hillary and Bernie were fighting quite close to the end there. So I, way ahead of time, had basically said, I'm going to support the progressive candidate opposing Donald Trump. And it turned out to be the candidate that I didn't really want to support. So I personally made the decision not to spend all my time attacking her, because I could have, with all the problems and the questions and things that she had. But I decided to attack the Republican candidate because he was going to be more negative in my eyes than her in her basically centrist establishment situation. So I didn't attack her, but the fact that she didn't win is not a complete surprise to me, and I don't feel like I'm responsible for it by not completely, totally diving into supporting her head over heels. But I would really have wished that we had a different pairing or a different combat between the two if we had Bernie Sanders, so that we would have the answer. Like, we've heard so many people saying that Bernie was a shoo-in, he could have easily beaten Trump. I don't think so. I think it would have been a lot more difficult than people think. But I would love to have seen it. I don't think we'll ever know, and the burners or busters will never know the answer to that now.
No, and the big question is it relevant, right?
Yep.
I mean, is it honestly relevant, Hannah? Because,
well, we all have 20/20 hindsight.
That's true. But some of me says this is not relevant for specific reasons. Now, if we do talk about the Harvard Business Review article here, and we do actually kind of get into what it talks about, and I don't know if you had a chance to read it or not.
A little bit. But I'm going through it right now, and basically, this is some of the stuff that we're actually going to touch on when we talk about the Affordable Care Act and my personal experiences and why I believe now that I can empathize with some people who don't like the Affordable Care Act and universal health care.
Yeah. And what they talk about in the article is how there's a lot of people that are professional people that are blue collar workers that have increased, their status inside of a company, this and that, who have lost their jobs, who haven't been able to make ends meet as well as they used to.
So they've moved in the backwards direction as far as social progress and financial whatever.
And you and I probably could sit here and rally and argue, and at the end I have a conclusion at the very end of the show that I'll present that kind of talks a little bit about my moral standing maybe versus it was people like them moral standings, right? And I don't want to do this us versus them mentality, but there is a different way to look at life that we do that not everybody else does. And this article...
I sense a European difference coming.
Probably a little bit, yeah. Probably a little bit.
All right, so back to the article.
But yeah, back to the articles. So they talk about how professional people were generally suspect, that managers are college kids, and they're like, they don't know shit. They're full of ideas, but they don't actually know how to do the job. That they're, people back from the 50s and 60s started talking about quack lawyers, right? They have different words for these people. They resent teachers. They resent people that are becoming more educated than them. And you and I have had this conversation before. We've talked about how our kids should fucking be smarter than us. We've talked about that. And I don't think that's a philosophy that was portrayed very heavily back in, let's just say, the 50s and 60s, because you had a male-dominated society that was slowly transitioning from a white male majority. And
well, it still was, I guess.
Yeah, but they're transitioning. It was transitioning through. It was allowing for, there was a lot more minorities fighting for their rights.
And women's rights.
And women's rights, yes. And so what's happening is that there's people that are getting left behind because they're not able to progress any farther. And our society is taking away the commercialized industrial jobs we used to have. You could go work at GM for $25 to $30 an hour. I had a buddy that worked even as little as 10 years ago at a manufacturing plant in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, right? You know what he did there? He assembled small trucks for the military. And this is what would happen. They would assemble these trucks. The military would use them. They also assembled Hummer MVs. They did stuff with fire engines, so they didn't do just military stuff, but the military was the largest contract. Well, my buddy started at $18 an hour. That was his starting wage. You know what he did all day?
Keep an eye on stuff.
He screwed bolts into frames of trucks. That's what he did all day. Literally. He literally had he had no thinking. Here's the 6-bolt pattern, screw here. Here's the second 12-bolt pattern, screw here.
He was a human robot. He was a human before the robot was there.
Yeah. And I'm not saying he's not smart. The dude was very intelligent, but his job was very easy. So the next pay position up was $22 an hour, and then you could rise to $25 to $30, and you would top out between $30 and $35 an hour, which is a lot of money. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's more than what I make.
Yeah, that's way better than what I'm getting right now.
That's because you're a slave to your father. And he's a Trump supporter, so you got a Trump supporter.
Actually, he wasn't. He doesn't vote at all, but he wasn't a complete Trump supporter. And he says like we talked about it. He says, "Oh, that guy's got some good ideas or whatever." So that's what I've been telling people is like, we don't have a choice now. We're gonna get force fed some of these things and see what happens. The idea that you were talking about, we're gonna see about that's in this article here for HPR.org is there's like this culture of ignorance that was popular then. It's like, if you're a smart kid, you're one of them book readers, that kind of stuff was looked down, and we still have that problem. And I would argue that it's been getting worse. We kind of had a peak, and now we're starting to see this like suppression of intelligence, and people that when they try to go on further and they really try to learn things, they're ridiculed and made fun of in schools and colleges and things like that. And it's sad that we have this embracing of ignorance in our culture, and when it comes to the different kinds of the Facebook stuff, when we look at these echo chambers and the fake news stuff that's been going on lately, what we're dealing with is tons and tons of information that nobody can really pick through very well. So we don't have just the one solution answer. We have the guy at the head of the house, the person who works and gets the paycheck. It's much more complicated than that now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. So in this article talks about how Hillary Clinton does does show arrogance, right? The email server. She talks down to people through the deplorables. Now, I could argue that Trump does the same thing and talks down to Hillary supporters. We could get into that argument, but in essence,
the nature of politics.
Yeah, in essence, she did have some sort of a smugness to her. You know,
she's a rich person, man.
She was part of the bought and paid for DNC. She was, and
yeah.
we saw that through Hillary's emails, and I don't know if I really would genuinely want to get into it tonight, whether it was right or wrong what WikiLeaks did. I don't want to get into that right now because I think it's going to detract from our conversation.
I just think that a lot of that information wasn't completely and totally false and crazy conspiracy stuff, but I didn't really think it was the most important thing to be going on. She made bad decisions. The server should have been a government server, and she made a mistake there. She copped up to it, but it may have been one of the big factors that cost her this, and that's unfortunate.
But what the big thing Trump captured was he went after the masculinity aspect, right? He went after the breadwinner status that men thought they had to have. He bought into and sold people the goods of the working class, right? And, you know, it's funny because the Democrats used to be the working class.
Yeah.
They did. They're not. Hillary...
We had unions, and they've been gutted lately.
But see, again, you're sidetracking me because in reality, you know, not unions aren't always these good things. Unions slow progress down. We can watch fat, bloated unions. For example, my company is to a point of scab. These people at Steelcase where I work, they were making $25 to $35 an hour.
I know,
and they were not making further improvements, which is actually an argument against socialist society, honestly. But these people were not making the improvements, whereas my company's like, well, we'll come in, we can do this, and we'll pay people $15 to $20 an hour. We'll save you all this money. And I can demonstrate thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. My company saves Steelcase over $350,000, and we're like 1% of their pie.
We were the largest. This is why the blend between socialism and capitalism is good. One side or the other is not good. And it's just, I mean, we could definitely talk about this much, much more, but how are we going to tie this back into Trump and how he got the middle class?
Because and I don't even know if it's the middle class or that end of the thing. Trump talks about gender. He talks about politics, and he talks about it on a very, very, very low level, right? He talks about it on the fact that he's saying, hey, how many white minorities are being overlooked? So we could sit there and go, okay, well, is there really white minorities? Well, there is. And it's not, and again, I'm not sitting here saying they're better or that we should be supporting white minorities. I'm just pointing out a fact. And I hope I don't get crucified for this because it's just, there is poor white people. There is.
Yes,
and white people still are a majority. So if there's a growing number of poor people and there's a growing number of poor white people, what do you think they're going to do when they feel like they're being backed into a corner? And so Trump tapped into that. And there's the NPR, I'm sorry, it wasn't the NPR. I was listening to another podcast that airs on NPR. And this other podcast had an interview, and it's called Reckoning's Podcast. Great podcast, by the way. And what this lady does, all they do is do storytelling. They go and interview people. And she interviewed this young guy, about our age, Hannah, who got rejected from a college. And he got rejected from a college because even though he was poor, he was white. And
affirmative action.
Yeah. He got fucked over in that aspect. And he got told, no, you can't have this. So what did he do? He got angry. Yep. His story made news in his hometown. All the people that he knew were like, hey, look, there's a guy that's smart enough to get a degree. Oh, he should get funded because he makes, no money and his family's poor. And yet he got rejected by the liberal college. Trump took that and ran with it. Now, we could sit here and debate whether we should feel sorry for him. Because in the end, and it's funny because in the end, he switched his vote. He did not vote for Trump. He actually voted for Hillary. He switched his vote because he moved into some areas in Chicago, finished the school, got a job very easily, made a lot more money than he was originally started out, made more money than his parents. And guess what? he moved into minorities, and he literally sat there, and he had neighbors who were fearful for their life this week. He had neighbors that were sitting there going, my mother is going to be deported. I don't know what I'm going to do. My relatives, they're Muslim. What's going to happen? Are they going to put them in? And he actually started to empathize and said, hey, you know what? You're right. My situation sucked. But there's 100 people on my street whose situation is a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't stop the fact from Trump going, where can I gain the most votes?
Well, I mean, everybody's going to play those cards. They're going to play the things that it's a sensational story. But what I like to do when it comes to these types of situations is basically talk to the statistics of it. The statistics of him or his case in the school getting rejected due to affirmative action is relatively small. I mean, the number of cases like his case where he was basically pushed out and didn't get his chance in college is going to be smaller than the number of minorities who benefit from those programs. So it's important to keep that in mind. But when we look at sensationalized media, I mean, the big things that we talked about multiple times of what's going on the internet and the stuff that's been happening lately with Google saying that it's going to start clamping down on fake news. Well, we were talking about sensational stories when it comes to people passing away or dying when it comes to protests. And I've been looking up, while we were talking, I've been looking up things where there was Snopes and people trying to find information to see whether this information is true. And sometimes it's hard to find that out. And like this is the case here where, well, this story was true, but just the headline that people might not have read the rest of the article and seen all the stuff that you saw, how this guy did do well. He found his way in and he pushed and he succeeded. He did a great job. Well, people don't see that. They don't read the rest of the article. They see the headline where white guy doesn't get into a university because of the color of his skin, and that's where they stop. Like, I would love to see people get into more deep debates when it comes to this kind of topic, but I just don't see it out there. And I think that would have really helped a lot of people on the fence that decided to lean towards Trump because of stories like this. Because let's face it, he's a media man. He's a marketing guy. He knows what he's doing. But he picked this story because it would help him, or at least his team of marketing people did.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're saying. I'm not saying affirmative action's wrong. I actually don't have a problem with it. And I think that guy's story is in the minority compared to the helpfulness that has happened. But that doesn't go back to, do we have to analyze where the DNC failed? The DNC failed to engage voters. And we'll, after we come back from break in a few minutes, we'll talk about some of the voting and the numbers and what could happen or couldn't happen. But, you know, Hannah, so I had a challenge, and I'm kind of a little shy to say this, but I had a challenge.
Shy?
Yeah. You? I had a challenge that came out, and somebody came in and basically said they knew Trump was going to win. They knew for a fact Trump was going to win, and they've been talking about it the whole time. Well, I went back and looked through the Twitter feed. I went back and looked through some of the posts, and I saw extremely anti-Hillary posts. And I sat there and thought, all right, hold on a second. So good for you. I'm glad you predicted Trump would win. You know, because I don't think you or I denied Trump winning. You know, I don't think you or I predicted it.
It was a possibility. I didn't think it was as likely, but I was surprised. I really did. I thought it would be, I didn't think it would be a landslide for Hillary, but I did think she would win.
And so we can go back and look at that. And we can look at that and go, okay, so sure, we fucked up. Did we not make it a bigger priority for Hillary to win? But there wasn't a bunch of good points to talk up about Hillary. It's not like she was like Bernie Sanders, where we had, hey, we side so much with her. We sided with her because we thought she was the better candidate out of all four of them.
Yeah, she was more progressive. That was the closest thing to what we wanted. Like that was about where it was. It's
and
like,
so,
what do you want?
Yeah. So think about this though. So even if we could have guessed it, even if we could have guessed that Trump was going to win, how would we have changed it? What would you have done different, Hannah? What would you have done different if you had known Trump was going to win? And you're like, okay, I'm 90% sure this is going to happen, right? Are you going to throw out
I've been told that this is going to be a landslide for Trump. My initial reaction would be basically the same kind of reaction I had I probably would have done more in a general positive consensus towards Hillary Clinton's positives. I would have pointed out the better things about her campaign, and I would have obviously concentrated much more on getting involved in making sure that the problems with Trump's campaign and basically teaching people or trying to teach people what some of the things that Trump was actually proposing would really do to the little guy, to the middle class, to the poor people that are supporting him. As we said earlier, the poor white people who came out in the highest number they've come out in a long time for, I mean, middle class America doesn't usually pop out of the woodwork for much. And we actually saw reductions that we'll probably talk about in the Democratic Party. So we saw these groups of people really come out excited in battle. I would have tried much harder to make sure that the minority classes were supporting, like, the best chance for them to be supported in the near economic future.
But hold on. So, and this is kind of where I get into a quandary, because I sit here and go, okay, well, think about this, right? We have to vote the way our conscience dictates. We have different moral stances that require us to vote differently. Some people couldn't vote for Hillary because they thought she was a lying colluder. Not saying she isn't, but they couldn't vote for that, no matter what. They had to set aside all these other things. And we will talk about the numbers. We will talk about what third party meant versus what it didn't mean actually for this election. Because a friend of ours helped us compile some numbers, and I threw them into a fucking Excel table. And yes, I like Excel tables, thank you. But
hey, math is good, man. I don't care what anybody says.
It makes me excited because this is kind of a little bit closer to what I do for a living, is analyze numbers. But me analyzing that Trump would have won and putting all of it together, what the fuck would I have done differently? How am I going to go out? I tried to convince people that I knew were not voting for Hillary to vote for Hillary. And in the end, I got accused of, hey, you're just telling me not to vote third party, man. You're just telling me that, oh, we can't have a third party voice. You're just a DNC colluder too. And it's like, no, I'm not. I fucking voted for Bernie. God damn it. You know, what the fuck? I voted for Bernie.
Well, I guess we're getting an
openly
explicit
stated
tag on this episode.
Yeah, fucking explicit tag. Fuck yeah. God damn it.
I voted for Bernie in the primaries, obviously, but I had to be rational and reasonable and say, yes, I love the idea of a protest vote, but in my eyes, getting my voice heard as a protest vote was not nearly as risky, because that's what I do here. We're talking numbers. Risky. What is more risky? The fact that Donald Trump is now in charge, or the fact that I could say, I don't like the Democratic candidate, so I'm going to not vote for her? Well, more risk, more damage to more people, personally, in my opinion, would be going with the guy who is proposing the most expensive 100 days in history. So we'll see later on what kind of numbers we got.
Yeah, and I guess, and we should probably close this part of the segment out, and let's get into the numbers, in a second here, because I think the numbers are somewhat important. But really,
they don't care. They're just numbers. They tell us this.
They do. They tell us the story.
Yep.
But really, to me, it wasn't the third-party voters that spoiled it. To me, it felt more like the non-voters spoiled it. But that's their right. If they don't want Hillary, why should they have to vote for her? But now we're stuck with Trump. We're stuck with the orange
sewer monster.
Sewer monster. All right, we got to take a quick commercial break because I got to pee, and I shouldn't say that on air, but I have to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're promoting secular feminism.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
What's something I could do with a very sexy lady friend of mine that people would find provocative, interesting, and entertaining enough to tune in week after week? Oh, I know. A podcast. If you'd like to hear me and Kate be provocative and thought-provoking week after week, join us on the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. We'd love for you to be part of our audiological three-way.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old Atheist Show format? Cellar Door Skeptics podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. And remember, if you want to be notified of live shows, subscribe to us on Spreaker, subscribe to us on iTunes. Spreaker will get you a live show, iTunes will get you downloads, and we'll always be in your iPod. We'll be like that secret little voice that whispers in your ear.
We'll be on time, but sometimes it might be the wrong day.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We talked a little bit earlier about our feelings on the election. I gave a little rambly speech at the beginning. Hannah kind of goes, hey, thanks for doing that, but,
I just sit back and drink a beer. It's all good.
and so we started talking about why the DNC may have lost the election. And when I look at it, the stories I've been listening to, and I've been listening to more stories besides just looking at the facts. And yes, I've inundated myself with more information than even when we were covering the fucking debates, dude. I've read more damn articles in the last week than you can even imagine. I've spent more time listening to podcasts. I can imagine
a pretty big number.
Oh, no. I probably read 100 articles in the last week.
Impressive.
And a lot of the stuff that I've been trying to absorb is why and how can we rebound? Because at this point, we're kind of stuck, right? There's not much else you can do. I'm not in favor of getting rid of the Electoral College right now. Not for this reason. And I say that with hesitancy, but I don't at the same time, because for me, if we get rid of this and we just go, yep, we're getting rid of it, it's going to be associated with Hillary Clinton, right? And I don't have a problem with her.
Associated with the rise of a crazy demagogue,
yes,
like Donald Trump. I would think it would be more associated with him. But
maybe. It depends on who gets to spin the narrative. Remember, only winners spin the narrative, Hannah.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm going to hope that 1984 isn't reality yet, because, everybody knows the popular vote went to Hillary, just like the popular vote went to Gore. And we're talking about the Electoral College, flipping people around and being, the trickster in this situation. And I don't think anybody will negate the fact that Hillary won the popular vote. And it's been getting bigger as the states that were super, super close, like Michigan, were finally counting the rest of their damn votes. I don't know why it took so long, but...
Yeah. And so, I don't know. We got to look at the voter turnout, though, because I think that plays a big factor in this. And we have a friend, and he's asked to remain nameless for a lot of reasons.
He used to be part of our writing group when we were part of Atheist Analysis. He was one of my best writers. He was amazing. He really liked to get into the numbers and stuff. I would call him Mysterious JW, but he was awesome on the show. And I loved the fact that he would go into stuff like really, really scientifically, and it made it great. He loved basic income and stuff like that. So high props to JW. We love him.
Yep. Thank you so much for helping us on this. So what he did is he took, I think it was like 10 of the closest states, and he said, okay, these are the states that, whether they are important or not, these are the closest states to this election. And he went back and he took the numbers, the voting numbers for Democrats and Republicans for 2012, and then he took them for 2016. And then he did some analysis and gave his own thoughts, and we've linked his blog right into the description of the episode, so you're all welcome to follow along. as we talk about this, and maybe someday we'll process my fancy Excel sheet. I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll do that.
Well, like they were going to get that Donald Trump video that you promised or something.
God damn it. I do have that Donald Trump video. It just has markings of the old podcast on there that I don't want to promote anymore because the dude's a douchebag. But I built the video. I put all that shit together. All he did was just take it and put his damn name on it. Anyway, so he went through and he analyzed the difference in losses. And I think it's very important to look at, actually. And I went a step farther. I went in and started inputting, third-party totals. Because I wanted to see, okay, how much did Jill get or the Green Party get? And I'm just going to generalize it versus giving names of candidates. Now, how much did the Green Party get this year versus last year, right? And is there a stronger Libertarian Party than there is a Green Party?
Not so much last year, but the last election.
Last election.
So
Fuck off, asshole. Stop micromanaging it.
I'm seeing the numbers, man. I can't lie.
Anyway, so I went through and we put all these into a table and we're looking at all the different things and, we can look at the difference between the numbers. So I'm just going to...
It is quite pretty.
It is. So if we look at all these different numbers in here, I'm going to hide these columns a minute so that we can, put the states with them. Inside of Arizona, and we'll pick that one first, Arizona lost 91,000 Democratic votes. And so
do we have a total number of voted in Arizona?
Yes. I have 933,655.
Oh, shit, that's 10%, man.
Yes. Now, in all fairness, though, the Republicans lost 216,000 votes.
Wow.
So it wasn't just the Democrats that lost. And that's, as soon as I saw that, and that was his first part of it, right? That was
migration away from the Republican Party because of their nominee. People
it could
just
be,
were disgusted.
And again, I'm not. Again, we're right now. I want to look at just statistical facts.
Yeah, we can't predict why people voted that way.
And so let's just look at the statistical facts for a few minutes here. But the reason I wanted to do a more in-depth analysis of this is because when I look at that and I said, okay, so yeah, Dems lost votes, but so did Republicans. Holy fuck, right? That's pretty big, man. You can't just say, okay, based on that state, yeah, Hillary lost votes, that's why she lost. Trump lost votes for that party too.
So essentially, did the 200,000+ people that didn't show up for the Republicans, did they go somewhere else, or did they just not show up at all?
Well, that's interesting. Now I got to unhide those things. So the Green Party and the Libertarian Party did not get a total of 300,000 vote difference.
No, it's only 120.
Not even that, because between the Green Party, and I guess I want to precurse this, and I probably will stutter a little bit because now we're talking about facts, and I want to make sure I get it right? The total third-party votes that was the difference between the two was only 65,000 votes. So you can't say in 2012, if somebody voted third-party, and then in 2016, more voted third-party, right? That all those came from people leaving the Democratic and Republican Party. Because
this sounds like the roughly 47% of the country that just didn't vote in this election.
In this state, I would side with you on that because the only third party gain was 65,000 votes. So, for example, we have a friend that votes third party almost all the time, always has in major elections, everything like that. That individual that votes third party would be counted as a normal third party vote. So I believe it's unfair. And again, we're not getting into weighted statistics here. This is just raw numbers. We could get into weighted statistics, but now we're talking really heavy stuff. It might be kind of boring. But in all fairness, if you voted in 2012 Green or Lib, third party, and then in 2016 you did the same, the net gain was only 65,000 votes versus a loss of 300,000 votes.
So really what we're looking at is all the people that said they're voting third party, they don't like either of the candidates, their protest vote in Arizona, at least, we've looked at their numbers. They really didn't go there. They didn't take their Democrat or the Republican vote and put it in the third parties. They just didn't show up.
In that round, yes. So then we move on to, I think Colorado was next. Colorado, the difference between the two was 119,000 increase in third-party votes. Dems lost 115,000. Repubs lost 49,000 for a total of 163,000 votes lost to the main parties.
And the third parties gained how many?
119. So there's still a net difference of 50,000 people. So even if you said everybody who went out and voted did not go, or went out and turned and voted third party, again, you would be wrong. This margin was a little bit closer in Colorado.
Yeah.
And I won't say again why or not why, but it's a lot closer.
So the margin essentially was 1,208,000 versus 1,136,000. I mean, we're looking at, just over 60,000 votes, it appears to be. And the difference between those, I mean, that could be in the realm of the third party increase there. In Colorado.
There is. The numbers is 119 versus 163 lost.
Yeah. So we're looking at 119 gain in third party. Colorado could have been a third party importance decision.
Maybe. Now, let's move on to the next state, Hannah. The next state was Florida.
Ugh.
Now, he wanted to know, here you go. Florida was a different beast. Third-party votes churned out 216,000 more.
Whoa.
Guess how many Democrat was more or less?
I can't see it on the chart that I'm looking at, so I'm sure you got a line somewhere over there.
247,000, almost 248,000 more votes for Democrat. They gained votes in Florida. Guess how many Republican, though? 442,000 Republicans
all these old people
came out and voted. I don't know. So in Florida, we can safely say third-party vote did not take away from either of the parties at all. It didn't. Everything gained. Florida must have been a pretty fucking apathetic state.
Well, my question is, 400,000 increases on the Republicans and what did you say, 200,000 increase on the Democrats. If you look at the numbers between 2012 and 2016 in Florida, they're not 400 and 200. I guess the Dem vote is about 200,000 from 4,237,000 to 4,485,000. Yeah, I don't know. Those numbers are pretty conclusive as far as the numbers increase from Democrats and the numbers increase in Republicans show on the totals for who won that state.
Yeah. So let's move to the next state because, again, I don't want to spend the whole segment just on numbers. Iowa was the next segment, or the next state. Iowa only had a 51,000 voter gain, but they in third party. They lost 171,000 Democratic votes, and Republicans gained 68,000.
And in Iowa, it's Utah was the big one when they gained the third party voters. Yeah, in Iowa, not so much. But so, do you think third party made a big difference in Iowa?
There, it made a lot closer of a difference. But again, I don't know how much it is because the people in Iowa went for Obama before, whereas we know Iowa had a hard time going for Hillary last time. Now, you want to know the biggest one? Here's the biggest swing, right? And this one I feel a little bit more comfortable in saying it fucked us a little bit. Michigan.
Right home.
Michigan, man.
Home.
Third-party votes were up 316,000 in Michigan. That's insane, dude.
It's not
just the Libertarian Party, though the Libertarian Party gained a lot. It's not just the Libertarian Party. It was the Green Party, too. There was 316,000 people that came out for third-party votes over the last term's prediction. Now, the other big difference, Democrats lost 300,000 votes. Republicans gained 164,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, so the Dems got slammered.
Yes, in Michigan. Michigan Democrats got taken out.
And you know why I could have predicted this from day one? from the day after the primary, when all those super suave, predictive guys over and ladies over at 538 said that the Michigan primary upstate where Bernie Sanders won was the biggest upset in political history, where she was expected to win by double-digit numbers, and she didn't win. You know why? Because in Michigan, the open election allows for independents to vote from just Democratic and Republican parties. And those independents made the difference. They made and you can see it in these numbers. No question that number increased enough because those independents voiced their opinion and they went places outside the two parties, and it made the difference in our state, in a battleground state, which is why Trump and Hillary were here days before the election.
Yes. And so that's a very interesting number. And it's funny because if we want to I want to get deep for a second just into the third party vote. In 2012, there was only 21,000, or let's just say 22, no, listen, there's 22,000 Green Party votes. There was only 8,000 Libertarian votes. In 2016, there was 173,000 votes for Libertarians. That's off the charts, man. That's like, holy crap.
That's really high.
Holy crap. Where did all these Libertarians come from? And if they didn't come from the Green Party, which is what it looks like they didn't.
My guess is they came from disenfranchised Republicans who really didn't want, like the ones that voted for Ted Cruz in the primary, they went to the Libertarian Party. And then, as far as I can tell, the Republicans just went crazy, or the Democrats just went wherever. Because I don't understand, and this is something we've been trying to figure out, is the people that went Bernie or bust and then went to Gary Johnson, which is like going to the other side of the fence. But, I mean, if anything, Bernie or bust would have gone to the Green Party, would have been much more closer to their ideology. But a bunch of them went to the Libertarian Party, but either way, both those parties saw major increases, and that affected, I mean, within the Michigan total was 2,267,000 for the Dems, 2,279,000 for the Republicans. We're talking just over 10,000 votes chose or determined what this state was going to do, and that's well into the realm of that 300,000 increase for the third parties.
Yeah. And that's the big thing here. You know, I mean, we look at Michigan, and we got to talk about Michigan, man. We're from Michigan.
Well, yeah,
you know?
This is our big battleground, and we kind of said what was going to happen if Bernie didn't get picked.
Yes.
At least I thought we did. I don't know. Maybe they didn't listen.
Maybe they did. Now,
I'm pretty sure Debbie Wasserman Schultz didn't really give a shit what Michigan had to say, even though it was one of the biggest that's ever.
All right, so I got to correct my numbers a little bit. I'm sorry. I had the Green Party with a huge gain, and they really didn't. So we'll go back. I'm sorry. So instead,
no, you said the Libertarians had the 173, and you didn't give a number for the Libertarian or Green Party.
Well, good. Then I don't have to correct myself. But the Green Party only got 51,000 versus, but still was more than their 21,000.
Yeah,
so
that brings a 30,000 gain.
Yeah, that brings the total difference between them a little bit closer. You know, it was a total of 194,000 versus 300. So that's the difference. I'm sorry, I had a wrong number in there. So it was only 200,000 vote difference for third party. But again, that third party for the Libertarians skyrocketed. So, and again, we can analyze this two different ways, right? So if we just say the majority of the people that went Gary Johnson were Republicans, that means the Republicans came out in droves in Michigan, and the Democrats fell apart.
Yeah.
If we took the difference.
Yeah, if we threw all of the Libertarians into the Republicans and all of the Green parties into the Dems, the Republicans would have won by a much larger margin than they did.
Yes. And that's kind of interesting.
It's not super surprising, because if you look at the way our state's distributed and the way our Governor Dick Snyder's been running around, we've been green around the metropolitan areas and red in all of the rural areas through the state pretty consistently for the last, 6-7 years.
Yep. In Nevada, there was an increase of 66,000 votes. There was an increase of only 6,000, though, in the Democratic side. and a 47,000 increase in the Republican side.
So Nevada came out for Republicans just showing up out of nowhere.
Yes.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Isn't Donald Trump a Las Vegas, Nevada icon? They love his swoopy hair.
Yep.
And then New Hampshire was, that was tight.
Yep.
348 to
next.
345,000 for the Dems. That's pretty tight.
Yep. So the total difference was only, again, 29,000. Democrats lost, though, 21,000, and Republicans gained 15,000.
And that put it so close they had to count for 3 days.
Yep. North Carolina, another big one. In North Carolina, they had nothing recorded for the Green Party.
That's the best
in 2012.
There's a list.
Hold on. That's 2012. In 2016, they had nothing recorded for the Green Party either. But they had an increase.
It's North Carolina. They don't like that lady saying the Wi-Fi gonna give their kids cancer.
Yeah. So they had a total increase of 83,000 votes. Now, the Democrats lost 16,000. Republicans gained 70,000. Now, so that means there was 150,000 more people that came out to vote in that state. So now the trend here, and we got a couple more states to go, but the trend here, because there's 2 more states that are huge, but the trend right here is that we're seeing in some of these states, Democrats not coming out and voting.
Yep.
A few states, it looks like there's a parallel between third-party votes taking away from two-party votes, but not the majority of them, just a few.
Well, these are just the battleground states, too. You got to remember
Yeah,
that.
this is just battleground states. We haven't even touched the rest
states
of them.
they weren't even close.
No. And anyway, but a lot more Republicans, it looks like, came out and voted. There's only one state only do I have a decrease in Republican turnout, and that's Arizona. Arizona was the, what do they call it when you don't give a fuck about something?
Apathy?
Yeah, they were the apathetic state. So, I want to take Arizona, Chris.
Well,
you need to make a
Arizona
main.
was a really big surprise. I mean, when people were doing their precursor stuff, they were like, wow, Arizona could go blue. And this was like a huge deal.
Yep. The next state that we look at is fucking Ohio. Fucking Ohio.
Oh, come on, you're not a big Ohio, Michigan big deal thing. It's just Ohio.
I am.
Ohio.
Fuck Ohio. Anyway.
Come on.
You know how much Democrats lost in Ohio? 500,000 votes. Holy shit, dude. 500,000 votes they lost.
That's pretty bad.
That's bad. That's bad. 500,000 people did not come out and vote. Now, Republicans are up 110, and the third party is up 144. But even those two combined, it's only 250. That's only half. That's only half. Half the people that came out and voted for Democrats didn't go fucking out and vote at all.
No.
That's insane. Ohio lost 400,000 votes. That's just, that's crazy to me. That's huge.
People weren't interested. They weren't enthusiastic about voting. Ohio had really big numbers in 2008. They had bigger numbers, not quite as big as 2008 and 2012. But, I mean, people really came out. They were super excited in 2008. We had, the candidate for change. In 2012, they're like, okay, he's still pretty good. We'll give him our shot. And, I mean, he easily claimed the minority vote in the state of Ohio. And this time, the only thing I could think of is the Democratic Party just assumed they were going to inherit the mantle of the Barack Obama minority vote. And I don't think they came out. I don't think they just showed up. They said, we're not interested. We'll just try to hold on to the few dollars we have and weather the storm of the Republican supermajority. And I think that was a mistake.
Yep. So then we have Pennsylvania was next. Pennsylvania, Democrats lost 145,000.
That was a surprise.
Yep. Republicans gained 232,000 votes. And third parties gained 120,000. That's crazy. Well, that's where all the Ohioan votes went. They all left Ohio and went to Pennsylvania.
I was going to say, I mean, if you look at the numbers, in Pennsylvania, they won by over 300,000 votes in 2012. And then the Republicans won by under, about 60,000 votes this year. I mean, so that 300,000 you take the number of losses for the Dems, and you take the number of increases from the independents, and we're looking at a pretty major difference here. That one, it's a bigger number between the two big parties, but it could have been just a slam from the third party on that one, too. It's Pennsylvania and what was the other one? Colorado are, I think, two of the closer ones when it comes to the third parties making a big difference.
Yep. Now, Wisconsin.
Ew.
Wisconsin. They lost 238,000 Democratic votes.
I blame the cheese.
They only gained 1,500 Republican votes, which
1,500?
is crazy. That's just it. No more than that. There's only 1,500 more people that voted Republican. And only 109,000 third-party votes came in. So that's 238,000. So basically, you could say that's a 220,000 piece loss.
That's terrible.
That's how many people did not come out and vote. So
I'm looking up the total number of people in Grand Rapids, Michigan, to see how much that. Okay, we're talking. That is like the entire city of Grand Rapids in 2013, just not showing up to vote. We have 192,000 people in 2013, the most recent census that's showing up on Google. It's just the third biggest city, as far as I know, in Michigan, just vaporizing. That's what happened in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So now what we got to do is we got to look at, okay, Democrats versus Republicans and the win-loss ratio, right? So I put an equation in there where Republican minus Democratic votes. Republicans won basically outside of one state by under 200,000, and most of them were under 100,000. And same with the Democrats. They didn't win by much more than 100,000 votes when they won the different primaries. So now, I think it's bad to say all third parties would have gone to Hillary or to Trump if you differentiated them up. But I just, for shits and giggles, because one of the big things I said is third party votes can't affect. They just can't fucking affect this.
We didn't think they would, but it seems they matter a little bit more in a couple of these states.
Yep. So that would be the difference. Now, on both sides of the scale, I'm going to admit, on both sides of the scale, they would have tipped it. So it's not fair just to say.
Yeah, it wouldn't be exclusively Democrats losing or exclusively Republicans winning if the third-party votes went to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, as we would have expected them
and
to.
we don't have enough time to get into that detail today. Maybe if you like the show and you like what we're talking about,
you like our lab report?
If you want to go further into detail, send us an email at cellardoorskeptics.com. Tell us, hey, I want to hear you analyze it farther, because we will. Because we've been accused of not doing any fucking analysis by other people.
So they want to see this spreadsheet. We could send it to them, maybe.
We could do that too.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to send the spreadsheet, now that I fixed it. But okay, so in every election, if all third party had gone to Clinton, she would have won every single one of the states. So what I want to stop right now is saying that third party didn't affect the election. It did. Now, I don't have the authority nor the knowledge to say, well, these people would have gone to Clinton, these people would have gone to Trump. I don't have that ability.
Well,
all I can tell you is that third party, the races were close enough in every one of those states, but one. There's only one it wasn't, and that was Ohio. But outside of Ohio, you suck. God damn it, Ohio. Outside of Ohio, every other one of those states would have gone to Hillary if all the third party had gone to her. And again, I'm not saying they would have, because I don't think that.
I don't think so either.
And the Libertarians came out more aggressively for Gary this time than even the Jill Stein supporters did. But third party did have some effect on this election.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to, and I'll be honest, I was one of the people that said, they aren't going to have an effect. Go vote third party. And I'm not telling anybody here listening that you shouldn't vote third party.
I'm actually kind of happy that third party is making a bigger splash. I'm saddened that the outcome this time was what it was, but I would love to see these numbers up 20, 30% for these third parties. so that we would see something as the 40-50% in big parties, and the other two. So let's say Republicans, Democrats split a majority, meaning that either Republicans or Dems, the total between the two would be 60, 70, 80%. But the independents would be looking at 20, 30% of the votes. I would love to see the numbers that high. They're not quite there, but I think the next election we may see some more growth because people apparently are more comfortable going outside the binary party system.
Yep. Now, here's the kicker.
Uh-oh.
If all the Democrats had come out to vote,
that
came out
did
before,
in 2012?
Yep. Trump would have lost.
Well,
it still would have been close on most states, except for Ohio.
Ohio is the one that ruins everything.
Ohio did. Fuck you, Ohio.
I hope we get an email from Ohio. Like, I hate you guys. Why are you so mean to me?
Why are you so mean?
We took all our steel away. So, yeah, third parties went in Ohio, didn't matter, but everything else apparently did. So, what are we drawing from this? What are we pulling from this table? So, like, we saw third parties matter to a certain degree, and they could have flip-flopped a couple of these real close races. But what's your closing statement on this segment?
For me, the whole thing comes down to the fact that nobody got out and voted. You didn't get out and vote.
It was so low.
If you can't come out and vote, it doesn't matter. Hillary would have won in almost every one of these states. And again, it would be by razor thin margins. I'll be honest. It's definitely not going to be that close, right? But she would have won. She would have won enough electoral votes to be able to put us away.
What kind of math are you doing right now, Ramble, sir? Like, you're just like, he's got, if anybody can see this, he's flipping through numbers, throwing columns, and shooting out math. Like, I've done engineering. I went through all of my Excel spreadsheets for all my lab reports, which is why I yelled lab report earlier. And, I mean, he's flanging this stuff all over the place. Like it's
the reason I'm doing this is because I switched the numbers around because it's one set of numbers I didn't run.
Okay.
In Arizona, she would have won all of the electoral votes by 3,000 votes. She would have won in Colorado, which she already did. She would have won by a little bit more. She would have lost Florida. She would have lost. Let's see here. That's where the problem is I can't see some of these, Hannah. That's why I have to hide them. But
so basically, what you're doing is you're going over what state she would have won, and we're looking at the total number of electoral votes she would have gained, assuming that these third-party voters who left the Democratic Party to go somewhere else, we don't know where, but they left, she would have won more electoral votes. What's the total of electoral votes if she would have won, and how many did she lose by?
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to get at, Hannah.
I know. I was trying to give you some time to think, man.
All right. So in Colorado, she would have just won by more. You know, there would have been more running that she would have done. Florida, she still would have lost. So would have lost Florida. Iowa, she would have won. Michigan, she would have won. Nevada, she would have won. Then we have New Hampshire, she would have won it still. She would have won. She would have lost North Carolina. So maybe we should highlight these, right? The ones she would have won and lost. So she would have lost, what did I say? She would have lost North Carolina. She definitely would have won Ohio. She would have won Pennsylvania. She would have won Wisconsin. So the only ones I have is North Carolina that she would have lost in, and she would have lost Florida, right?
Okay, so basically
that's 29
what we have
and
is
15.
So how many did she gain? That's the question here, because she lost by 30 or 40 points.
Yes.
That's what I was.
Yep. So that's what I have. So I'm deleting. I'm going to delete these. So she would have won. This is really hard to do on the fly, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I see 306 to 232 for the presidential election this time. So 306 and 232. That's 68 plus 6. So 74 votes between the two. So how
she
many
would have
did
won
you calculate?
81 is what I
She would have won
told.
81 more, which would have turned the tides.
Yep. So she would have had 81. She would have been easily over his 290, and plus he's losing all of them.
Yeah. So he would have actually had less than 232.
Yes.
She would have had more than 306.
Yes.
So
she would have won in a landslide if Democrats hadn't come out and vote.
And so basically, everyone who's listening, if you're interested, what you should do is you said, hey, Chris, I want to check your math, and let us know if his math is up to par on what you think and the way this calculation stuff could work, because it's pretty cool stuff.
Anyway, so thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much. We got to take a quick commercial break because Hannah's got to run to the restroom because it's not me this time, it's him.
Yeah,
I got to get another drink. We'll be right back talking about the Affordable fucking Care Act, Hannah's hearing aids, and why Trump supporters still don't support the Affordable Care Act. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
This is Ishmael Brown, the HNIC from the Angry Black Rant podcast, and you're listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, my name's Callie.
And I'm Ari.
If you're like most of us, you're very concerned about the gay agenda's plans for world domination.
Are you tired of seeing glitter all over every damn thing?
Do you hate rainbows as much as any other red-blooded American?
Then we have the answer for all your baseless fears and unjustified paranoia.
Presented exclusively on Secular Media Network, the Gaytheist Manifesto is your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement.
You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and at gaytheistmanifesto.secularmediagroup.com.
If you're not ready to get in line for your mandatory gay marriage and you're terrified of short-haired women in pantsuits, come have a listen and get up to date on their plans. You'll be glad you did.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
This is Trav Ramon, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for tuning in to another amazing episode.
I think that's a count to 4.
I don't know.
So far,
have you been counting? Have you been playing the drinking game? Anyway, thank you so much for joining us again. We are very excited to bring to you another show, even though we're a couple days late. So again, if you want the updates, make sure you go over to iTunes and subscribe. Give us a rating for as well if you want to. And then go over to Spreaker and subscribe. Then you'll know when we go live. You'll know when we don't go live. And
we
you'll be
got
able
our
to listen to us.
first 5-star rating on iTunes not too long ago. It was pretty cool.
We did because Hannah won't even go rate our own show.
I'm supposed to do that?
You are.
I don't have an iTunes account.
That's right, because you're a shitty...
I'm an Android dude.
No, you're cheap. You're just a cheap person. You don't even like Android. You buy cheap phones. You don't even buy good phones. You buy like the shittiest.
I had
phone
the
you can get.
HTC One 9. It was the best HTC phone. And now the people who make the Google Pixel phone, which is gonna be sweet, I'm gonna probably buy that. I didn't want the Nexus 6, the Google Nexus 6 one, because I didn't want Roy Batty to eat my face and kill me like he did everyone else in Blade Runner. And props to everyone who understands what the hell I just said, because it's a random Philip K. Dick moment. But no, this segment's going to be fun because I'm not going to talk about random weird trivia the whole time. We're going to talk a little bit about the Affordable Care Act, but it's going to be an esoteric feels-based concept. I've been dealing with some stuff recently. We mentioned it, but I didn't have a chance to break it down and really get into it when we were talking about on the show last week about hearing aids and what my difficulties have been and kind of the prices and stuff. But the way I feel and the way I hear what's been happening here...
You can hear? Damn, I didn't know that.
I can hear myself about half a second delay because I got headset running through the computer here. But the whole thing, I've been hearing people complain about the Affordable Care Act and the people that benefit from it and the people that don't. And I've been like, okay, well, it's better for the little guy because it helps him so much. And I just recently got slammed with costs that I was trying to avoid. And in the end, I could not get out of them. And so I've been trying to see it as this is an empathic response that I would have to other people kind of feeling that. So I really, do you think we should just dive into my hearing aid, or do you have any kind of related story to this? Because I can go for a while on a hearing aid problem.
I'll be honest, I don't have a story. I did do a little research when you're like, hey, and I got this long random text saying, fuck ACA, blah, 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 blah. Oh my gosh, now I can understand why Trump voters would do this, and I can understand this is a downfall. This is where Obama has, I guess I don't want to say
But
failed.
this Affordable Care Act really needs to be
improved. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's actually a couple of different articles, right? I found CNN had an article called Hearing Loss, an Invisible and Widely Uninsured Problem. And I read it, and I feel empathy for you because of some of these things. And Medicaid, I found out, and I didn't know this, Medicaid's not really good at covering hearing aids.
Medicare, yes. Medicaid,
sorry,
no.
Medicare.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, but even then, it's not that good. Like, old
Exactly.
people are really slammed with these prices. And so, basically what's happened here is you go to an audiologist, you get your ear test, and they say, you've got hearing loss. Well, here are your options. And I did that, but I've been doing that for the last 28 years. I'm a young person, 32. I have massive hearing loss, 85 to 90%. And I've had hearing aids my entire intelligent life. I don't have any memories of my life pre-hearing aid. And it's an interesting place to be because there's not a lot of people who have also had that. And my hearing loss has gotten worse from 50% or so when I was diagnosed down to where it is now. And my assumption is that 45, 50 years old, I will probably be completely deaf. Go stem cell research. Hopefully they can fix my head. But in the end, this is the hearing aid world that I live in. And the last pair that I got, I had government assistance because I graduated from college. And there was a program, Michigan Rehabilitation Services. If anybody's out there looking for a job or looking for help for medical stuff, talk to these people. They will probably be able to help you. But I got half of my hearing aids paid for, and they got discounted rates. So I only paid $1,700 for a pair of hearing aids. Now, I don't know if any of you out there, if you had to pay $1,700 for a pair of glasses, you'd probably be upset.
I'd shit my pants. I wouldn't actually be able to pay that. I'll just so everybody knows, I definitely don't make enough money to pay that out of pocket. That'd be like a year's worth of being able to save for it.
It'd be a payment plan, and it would make your life difficult. And so the question is, well, why is that okay for hearing loss? Well, that's not even close to the price for hearing loss, because that's the Michigan Rehabilitation Services helping me. This most recent set that I've got, it's been 6 years since I got help out of graduating out of college. And I went in and I had my hearing test, and I was like, listen, guys, I'm here to get a new price for some hearing aids. And I'm expecting the $3,500 that I got quoted in the last pair. And they said, well, the entry price for the worst things we offer is $4,500. And you can go up $1,000 each tier until you get to the top of the end, which is going to be $7,500. And I laughed at the woman's face. She was the new audiologist. My audiologist retired, and he's got there's new people that run it. And I don't know these people. And I mean, I just that is absurd. That is insane. That 2 microphones and some programming are going to cost $7,500 when the phone that I have in my pocket can see space for less than $1,000. I went on this, angry internet rant and search and dove in, and I found a solution, and it's something that I'm not proud of.
All right. Well, before we get into your solution, I want to get into what the ACA actually covers, right? So let's get into some states a minute, because I went and did a little bit of research this afternoon to say, okay, hold on, maybe I can help you. I can't. It just gets worse. And you know, the sad thing is you have a genuine disability in this aspect. You didn't go out of your way to go to a bunch of death metal concerts like I have to reduce your hearing, right? No. You were born this way. God, this is like a God thing right here, right? If it's an act of God.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you putting me through all this horrible extra work that, I mean, I wouldn't really have to deal with if I wasn't a deaf person.
Yeah. So now, the ACA has literally, they have this little chart from Hearing Loss Association of America. And at the end, I have some good news, but right now, I have some bad news. So in Alabama, hearing aids not covered. Alaska, not covered. Arizona, ironically enough, 1 hearing aid per year, and a hearing exam is covered. So, Hannah, you need to move to Arizona.
Apparently, I need to become a person who likes really dry desert temperatures.
Arkansas, nothing covered. California, nothing covered. Of all places, too. Like that, I would have expected California, nothing.
No, the one that I would not expect is the end.
Colorado, hearing aids covered per person, but only under the age of 18. Now, you know what this says to me? You know what that says to me? Yeah. Isn't that insane? So hold on.
The lowest number of people on the planet that need hearing aids.
Yeah. But okay, so when you were a child, you needed hearing aids, right?
I did get them when I was younger.
Okay. But think about this. Why did you need them? As a kid, you didn't go to the metal concerts or electronic concerts to blow your hearing out.
Yeah,
you didn't go swimming in a pool and blow your eardrums out and then pay for surgery. This is a natural disease, right?
Well, a natural handicap.
Natural handicap, okay. And
so
why does it go away when you turn 18? How can you all of a sudden, oh, now you have a job, you can go afford it. Hey, 18-year-old, here, go to college, and go work at fucking McDonald's, and oh, by the way, we're not going to fucking cover your $7,500 hearing aids. That's insane to me. Why even have that provision in there?
Here's your high school diploma. Here is your entry-level position. Here's your college application. I hope your hearing aids last for the next 6 years while you graduate from college.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you won't be able to hear your professor. Good luck, junior.
Yes. Insane. Connecticut, under 12. Connecticut.
They're helping children so that they can actually learn, which, great. That's incredibly important. I actually had that. This is funny. When I was really little, the program that helped me was called Crippled Children. And now that's like completely, totally politically incorrect. But.
It is. Delaware, under 24.
Good for them.
District of Columbia, not at all. Florida,
the last one.
Florida, guess what? Not at all.
That Florida, I cannot believe it would not be common enough to be regular. Like one of the arguments that we have here is that hearing loss is so rare that it's not financially viable for these insurance companies to carry it because it costs them money to offer hearing aids to their insurees. But in Florida, are you kidding me? Half the country retires to that state.
That's why they don't cover it.
There's got to be enough old people walking around going, really.
Yeah. So Georgia excluded our all hearing services. They go out of their way to tell you instead of just not covered. Everything's not covered in Georgia. But guess where it is covered, Hannah? Hawaii. You should move to Hawaii. It's nice and warm there, a lot of beach.
How's the podcasting in Hawaii? That sounds pretty good.
I don't know. I kind of want to go to Hawaii myself. Idaho, not covered. Illinois, they do cover them except for bone-anchored hearing aids. So Illinois is a little bit better. That's pretty close.
What that is, just for an explanation for people, the bone-style hearing aids, it's a hearing aid that goes on the back of your head, and it just goes against your cranium, basically. It vibrates to your skull. If you ever have a hearing test, there'll be one of the parts of that test will be this weird little vibrating thing they put on the back of your head, and it vibrates, and you're supposed to just say, hey, I hear a sound when it's making it. And that type of hearing is something that you can lose, and so people put a hearing aid on your head that vibrates, and the vibrations work their way into your head so you can hear people talk. It's really cool.
Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, not covered. Kentucky, they do cover it for under 18.
So what
for
we're
Louisiana,
seeing,
under 17. For Maine, under 18. Maryland, under 18. Massachusetts, under 21. Michigan, not covered. Minnesota, under 18. I know you know. Minnesota, under 18. Mississippi, not covered. Missouri, only newborns. Montana, not covered. Nebraska, not covered. Nevada, they cover it up to $5,000.
That sounds perfect.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Per calendar year.
Wow,
and you only get
$5,000 per year? New hearing aids every year?
No. But only limited once per 3 years. But you get it. You could have it for a single person up to $5,000. That's still better than any of the other ones we've had. New Hampshire under 18. New Jersey under 15. New Mexico under 17. New York, insane amount of laws. And then
That's
even
a
get into
paragraph.
them. Yeah, basically they're the bone ones again that you just talked about.
Yeah.
North Carolina, they're covered to 21. North Dakota, nothing. Ohio, nothing. Oklahoma, fuck you, nothing, basically.
The pan hates you.
Yeah. They're under 18, sorry. Oregon, under 18. Pennsylvania, jack shit. Rhode Island, under 19. Nothing in South Carolina. Nothing in South Dakota. Tennessee. I could just go on and on. I've not found one outside of fucking Hawaii that does anything.
Yep.
Hawaii's the only state that cares.
Well,
what the
one
fuck?
One of the things is the hearing loss has a stigma to it. It's not a real bad stigma, but it's a lot of people, if they have hearing loss, they're really, really hesitant to have it checked. Like, oh man, I need hearing aids. I don't even want to get tested. I can't hear you. They wait until they're 50 before they go get a hearing test. And so people have been learning more about it. And the Affordable Care Act obviously has not been very good at supporting these types of things, especially when the cost is so high. Because you saw on most of those, the elderly are not getting any help. Medicare, Medicaid, in some cases cover it, but like I said, $4,500 to $7,500. How do you think little Miss Gertrude on her tiny Social Security bill is covering $7,500 hearing aids that last 5 years? Break that down. The average life is approximately 5 years. That's over $1,200 a year just to be able to hear. Think about that. If you had a cost, here's a tax. Here's a tax for you, hearing person. It costs you $1,200 just to be able to hear what people say. And that's how you will be able to function properly in society. There's not an undue burden. And that's been my argument here, is that this isn't something that's like, oh, well, listen, it's your fault. You were incredibly irresponsible, and now you have to deal with the side effects. No, I've been like this my entire life, and I have an extra $1,000 a year that I have to pay so that I can function properly in society. Because if I didn't have hearing aids, I would not be able to function. I would not be able to do what I do for a living besides actually run the machines. I wouldn't be able to be the vice president of my company. I wouldn't be able to talk to engineers and plan things out, make phone calls. I would be limited to simply operating a machine. It would be incredibly complicated, and I would be halved in my potential as far as future. Well, think about all the other people who have heard all their lives and they've lost it, and they don't have it now, and they can't afford it because they got to pay for their pills and the medication. Everything's incredibly expensive. Like, this is breaking down into the healthcare costing way too much money. And once again, like I said earlier, my solution, I just want to tell everyone this. If you have a problem with hearing, the whole thing here is I can't stand these giant big box stores, the Sam's Club, the Costco. I've always had a problem with it. It's like, I want national products from China, and I want them the biggest container they have. Well, guess what? They have hearing aids at Costco, and they pay their employees a great minimum $15 an hour. Guess who's going to Costco? Me, because I ordered hearing aids, and they'll be here on Monday. $2,600 for the top of the line Phonak hearing aids. They have a special deal with Costco, and they connect with them. But there's a bunch of other companies that have hearing aids too. They give you a free hearing test, and this is my commercial for Costco. I'm so elated that I was able to find something that's cheaper. But it's sad that it took essentially pure capitalism to get me here, and that my audiologist and my medical care and my health insurance basically told me to piss off.
Yeah. And I think this is one of those dark moments, I guess we can say, in healthcare history. Because the CNN article points out that over 37 million people suffer from some sort of hearing loss. and it only grows as the number gets older.
And there's 300 and something million people in this country, so that's roughly 10%.
And yet, nobody wants to cover this. Nobody wants to invest in this. On the capitalistic side, there's money to be made in hearing devices if you can figure out how to make them cheaper and still make money off them.
Or I think they can actually make them cheaper, but I don't think the demand is high enough. So you think about like college books or whatever, like not enough people buy them so that they can reduce the price down to they're cheap because they're not getting bought enough.
But
so
it's
they
because
make
they're
all their
not
money
covered
back
by
in
insurance, Hannah. If they were covered by insurance, people get them. My glasses,
I know.
My glasses cost me $350.
Okay.
For me, I about shit my pants, but because I have astigmatism in both of my eyes now, and my eyes just keep getting worse. They don't get any better. I have to have my glasses pretty much to drive, to see things far away, to concentrate. I get headaches without them. They covered them. My glasses billed out at, I think, almost $1,100. And the insurance covered the majority of them. I only had to pay for a portion of the lenses and my frames, basically.
So you're looking at 30%, basically, from the rough numbers that you gave me. I would love to pay 30% of $7,500, which in the end is about what I did.
Yes. And in the end, the more people that would purchase them, the farther the cost will drive down.
Yeah. It's one of the problems that they have with the Affordable Care Act is that they don't have a really large number of healthy people that have joined into it. The people that are getting into it are the people that really, really need a lot of care. So it's very expensive for the insurance companies to get involved. And they're leaving the market because, unfortunately, due to an obstructionist Republican majority besides the president, that it wasn't able to be passed as a single-payer plan like it was initially proposed when he ran for president in 2008. But in the end, this is what we have right now. And what it is decent, but it needs to get better. It needs to cover these types of things. But the thing that the whole reason why this is basically coming back to a political perspective is that I kind of empathize with the people who don't like the Affordable Care Act. I was just told by a website that says, you know what, you don't count. Your hearing loss isn't important enough, and your financial difficulties don't matter enough that we, the federal government, will make sure that you're able to hear and function in society. And the only thing I can think of when I hear that is the people in middle-class America, the Trump supporters who said, the Affordable Care Act doesn't help me. It helps poor people. It helps people that I don't know, but it helps. They haven't paid taxes. They're not getting anything. And I'm angry that my bills are so high and it costs me this much. And that was my first thought when I saw really, really expensive hearing aid bills that I could not get coverage for anything, is that the people who were mad and pissed off about the Affordable Care Act forcing them to spend money, a lot of those guys are, the middle-class white Americans who maybe do have a decent paying job, and they've got stuck with a bill like I did. I'm not poor. It's not incredibly difficult for me to make that payment, but it hurts. And I can see them saying that it hurts enough that they would never vote for a Democrat who would be for socialized medicine.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break, refill our whiskey glasses, because tonight's episode is brought to you by Ezra Brooks, the shit whiskey out of the shit barrel. But it gets you fucked up. It's like Trump, but better. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey guys, this is Wyatt Mathers from the Atheist Avengers podcast. You are listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
Hi, this is Dan, Ryan, and Matt with the Godless Revolution podcast. We've had a lot of great guests on this show, such as Russell Glasser, Dan Arrow, Brian Fields, David Silverman, Doug Mesner, a.k.a. Lucian Greaves, and Joey Kirkman, whom we love a lot.
We've also had a lot of really cool local guests. And we're a podcast that likes to fight for the separation of church and state and against anti-skepticism of all kinds.
You should give us a listen, because if you don't, you're going to be really sad.
Make your ears happy. Listen to the Godless Revolution podcast.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
This is Deborah McTaggart from Beyond the Trailer Park, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Every time. We're gonna do it. We are gonna do a Scream song Cellar Door Skeptics thing, and we're gonna see what Chris can do.
We should do that. And I actually have friends that have trained in this. Like
we got condenser microphones, man. We can goof off.
We should do this. I got somebody that's willing to play music for us and let us record this way. So I think we're gonna do that, and I think that's a good idea. I got a week coming off next week and a week in December, so you just have to figure out what day you're gonna come over and get fucked up, and we're gonna scream into microphones.
Oh yeah!
But before we go into our last segment, I have something I have to play. I do.
Oh man!
So Hannah's been talking about the elusive Trump video, and you're not gonna be able to see this because it's a podcast. But I put together a bunch of different Trump clips back in the day, before he was even nominated. Here it is. And we're going to do a shot.
Bang,
Here's the fucking 2017, baby, because 2016 can fuck off.
Today, I have the honor of introducing a man who needs no introduction.
3 Atlantic City casinos run by Donald Trump have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for the 3rd time.
His legend has been built, and his accomplishments are too many to name.
Donald defaulted on payments of almost $20 million due on some of the bonds used to finance one of his hotel casinos.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today a man who I have loved and respected my entire life.
Ew.
My father, Donald J. Trump.
I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. I tell you.
like Steve Jobs.
I never went bankrupt. Neil, I never went bankrupt. Never went bankrupt.
Okay.
Just your comment. Okay.
But
I never went bankrupt.
Donald Trump.
I'll bring back our jobs from China, from Mexico, from Japan, from so many places. I'll bring back our jobs, and I'll bring back our money.
Donald Trump has always been successful. But when you say failures, I don't think I've had failures. But let's go ahead. Ask me about a couple. Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United
The
States.
saddest moment in American history.
And we are going to make our country great again.
Okay. Trump hotels and casinos filed for bankruptcy protection 3 times in 6 years. Okay, let me explain it to you. Very simple. Isn't that a failure? Not really. I mean, look, it worked out very well for me.
It did for him.
Our country needs a truly great leader.
Wait a second. You were chairman of the board. I was chairman, but I didn't run the company. I had nothing to do with
He's president, and he doesn't run the United States.
You were paid $2 million a year. Excuse me. I didn't run the company. I'm just telling you. So what were you paid $2 million a year for? Excuse me. Because of my genius, okay?
He was paid $21 million for his genius. Oh my God.
Sadly, the American dream is dead.
You killed it.
But if I get elected president, I will bring it back. Bigger and better and stronger
More gold
than
plated.
ever before, and we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Burn the
Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
Oh, is this when he slammed him at the presidential dinner? Oh, man.
It was. I'm sorry, we can't see that part. That was good. That was a good part. That was actually probably the best part. My moment that was the proudest of moments. Was the
you sound
Obama
like
speech.
you're doing the Monty Python skit there. The proudest of the proudest moments for proudest of proudest.
Of the proudest. Thank you, dog.
All right, so we got what? What's the next segment we're going to be running on here?
So we're ending the show. We're ending the show talking about Trump's 21 days, his campaign promises, which is kind of why I played that. And what do we do? What do we do from here? Because we're kind of stuck at this point.
We light his feet on fire and keep him in.
Well, not literally though. Just let's make sure you're not literally suggesting anybody does that, Hannah.
Why would I ever suggest such a thing?
I'm just making
can you
sure.
stand the smell from orange toenails burning?
Jesus. Oh, man. The alcohol has come
in all
too much
seriousness,
tonight.
really, it's the political idea to hold his feet to the fire for all of his promises. And we have to ask all of his supporters, did he literally or figuratively say all the things that he said? Did he literally mean a wall? Did he literally mean deport people? Did he literally mean ban Muslims? Because it's going to be backpedaling for that, because those are pretty difficult things to actually do. So we'll see where he goes from that, and we should all demand either that he holds true to his promises or find out what he's actually going to do.
Yeah, I think you misstepped. We're not going to light his feet on fire. We're going to hold him over the fire.
Well, it's more fun to say light his feet on fire. I imagine like a troll with big, nasty, thick toenails. I mean, really, really nasty stuff. But
all right. So NPR has a great article, and again, we have all the links in the description because we are the podcast that has the links. We have the best links. We do.
Oh, man.
God,
it's sad that's
okay, I gotta sidetrack for a second here, because one of the biggest things that we said, and I can't remember what episode it was, but we were talking, and I was like, well, if Trump wins, the good thing about that will be that we'll have humor for 4 years. There will be nothing short that we will.
I don't remember what episode it was either, but it was the exact opposite when the people were talking about George Bush leaving office. They're like, what are the comedians going to do? They don't have the idiot at the top of the podium to make fun of all the time. I mean, what is Will Ferrell going to do when he can't stand on Saturday Night Live stage and say strategery? And I mean, and then Lewis Black was one of the guys that said, it's like, well, I hope you do know that I had jokes before President Bush.
True.
Well, I mean, it's the same situation. Like, comedians and liberal pundits are going to have material for the next 4 years, no question.
Yeah. But let's be serious for a second, because we're somewhat of a serious show. I guess I make up my own words, I'm told. I heard you and my wife talking before about how I just like say my own words and make up newfound words and claim they're my own.
Well, your son has his own reality, so you can have your own language. That's fine.
That's true. So one of the first things is he's going to propose a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress. That's
and
what
he
he said
only
he's going to
needs
do.
one state legislature to actually agree with him in order to be able to perform a constitutional amendment too. That's the big thing. I've seen this a bunch of times. If he has a little bit more support than we expect him to, he could actually propose and pass constitutional amendments, and that's a big deal. But he actually wants to he would have to have all of the established Republicans say, yes, we want term limits. And do you think that's possible?
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says, I would say we already have them. They're called they're called elections. We don't need term limits. They're called elections. So they're already fighting him on that.
Of course they are, which is why one of the reasons why I've been like kind of twitching a little bit when Democrats have been trying to align themselves with Donald Trump as a way of supporting opposition against the establishment Republicans who are obviously going to be battling with the Trump outsider policy. Because we don't know who is Trump's going to be the puppet for. Is he going to be the puppet for the establishment Republicans, or is he going to fight them the whole time? I don't know.
So the next one is he's going to create a hiring freeze on all federal employees to reduce federal workforce through arbitration, except military, public safety, and public health. So according to the Bureau of Statistics, see, I made up a new word. There are 2.7 million federal employees as of November. That includes 593,000 postal workers. The number of federal workers has remained fairly stable during the Obama administration, and it is in fact as low as it has ever been since the 60s. So the federal workforce did grow a bit early on in the Obama administration when he first took office because he hired departments of defense, homeland security, and veterans affairs employees. Trump's effort to freeze the federal workforce are likely to find support on Capitol Hill because Republicans have proposed shrinking the number of federal employees by at least 10%. Now, if he freezes it, that's different than shrinking it. So my guess is they probably will support him. Freezing it is probably easy to do because they'll be able to reallocate funds and individuals throughout the government. So that's probably one of his predictions that will probably happen. And he'll probably be supported by the Republican majority.
Well, that'd be an easy one from the do, because if you think about it, what is the entire principle of the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party? We've talked about this in the switch. The big switch that we talked about was that the Democrats were pro-small government when there was a conservative push by, it was the conservatives, the people who liked small farming and small groups and small states, and the Articles of Confederation were the Democrats. They didn't want this centralized government. And the Republicans wanted a big centralized government because they wanted the infrastructure for the big businesses. The Republicans at the time were very big business, and they've kind of always been. But once they got the infrastructure, the government built it, then they didn't want it anymore. And so they were like, okay, well, we don't want the big government anymore. Dismantle it. Well, the Democrats are still supporting the big government. It's helping people and everything. So in this situation here, this should be a great example of a Republican tendency to reduce the number of people, as in the U.S. government is the largest employer in the entire country, that they would want to reduce that. That's not a surprise.
Yep. And that doesn't get to his point of making more jobs, but hey, that's okay. So the third thing...
Actually, a reduction.
It's a reduction. The third thing he's going to do is there's a requirement for every new federal regulation to get rid of 2 existing regulations. So
any new one added, he has to remove 2 old ones?
Yes, which would reduce federal regulations under that mandate. And they say basically there's up to almost 80,000 a year that happens. So
yeah.
In all fairness, that one is probably going to be an easy one he'll be able to do. Now, it depends on what ones he takes care of, right? If he goes after the environmental ones, like the EPA power plant ruling to cut carbon emissions, that's bad. But
that'd be a little bit more difficult for him because he would actually have to start removing himself from the Paris agreements on the UN Council and everything. So, I mean, I think he'll have more difficulty removing himself from like greenhouse gas type stuff. But when it comes to like regulation and economic regulations and stuff like that, like repealing Glass-Steagall, like our best buddy Bill Clinton did when he allowed banks to start investing in risky markets, like I can see Donald Trump taking that head over heels deeper into sketchy
that's actually
banks.
what they talk about. How he has talked about removing the Dodd-Frank law. He has, and
Dodd-Frank isn't the best thing in the world, but it's one of the last things we have that just keep some kind of regulation on banks.
The next one is a 5-year ban on White House and congressional officials becoming lobbyists.
I like that. I
after
actually
they leave
do.
Government. And so, I agree with you, actually. I agree 100% with you.
This is part of the outsider stuff that we like,
yes. Though. And earlier, we didn't touch on this, and we probably should have, but earlier I wanted to kind of talk about the difference between a Trump presidency and a Republican presidency, right? Because we could be angry, and we could scream, and we could yell, we could protest.
This could be Jeb Bush here, who would be towing the party line.
Yes. The difference becomes, though, is that he has made a lot of fringe political claims. He has. This is one of them. If Trump does do this will affect lobbying like you won't believe.
This and the term limits, those are two things that I would think a lot of Democrats would support.
This one, it depends, because if the Democratic Party doesn't actually take itself apart and look at itself, it won't do anything.
No.
And we could talk about that in a minute, because, and I didn't put the, we're already at an hour and 50 minutes. I got a ton more to go, like Debbie, Wasserman, and, there's all sorts of different officials that I want to talk about in the DNC that are failing to see their failure. But I kind of want to analyze this. Maybe next week we'll cover that. So I agree kind of with this 5-year ban, only because what it'll do is it'll be a tough request, but it will push lobbying jobs not as a payoff, but as something that's a sacrifice, right? And we'll move some of that. He also wants to put a lifetime ban on White House officials lobbying on behalf of foreign governments. He wants to put a complete ban on foreign lobbyists raising money for American elections.
That doesn't surprise me at all, really, with protectionist ideals and the things that Trump has been supporting the entire time. Like, these types of things are completely expected. And it depends on your ideals on globalism, whether or not you think they're a good idea or not. I personally think it's a great idea to start removing all kinds of fundraising stuff from the government. So, cheers to the outsider candidate saying, screw the establishment. You guys shouldn't be raising money from everyone and all the people at all times. You should be concentrating on governing. This is an area where the outsider in the two of us, and probably the socialist in the two of us, want to say, you know what, get your corporation the hell out of my government.
Yep, exactly. So then he talks about the different actions to protect American workers. He wants to withdraw from NAFTA or renegotiate it.
Yeah.
One of the two. So renegotiating NAFTA is not a small matter. The agreement approved by Congress more than 2 decades ago ties together the economies of U.S., Canada, Mexico. Changing it would hurt the U.S. businesses and farmers that have well-established supply chains, distribution systems based on it. Still, Trump could significantly undermine NAFTA by using administration enforcement mechanisms to hassle companies, making life potentially difficult for anyone doing cross-the-border businesses. Could NAFTA be killed? Probably not, but it might be able to. So now, I want to talk about that for a second, because I work for a company that utilized NAFTA to increase profitability. I work for a company that outsourced lots of jobs. This is a fringe position right here. Not one I'm 100% in agreement with, to be honest with you. But this is a big fringe position. And I'll be honest, Hannah, in my political career, one of the big things I've argued against is NAFTA. Just so you know ahead of time, so that you're not surprised when somebody tries to out me for this.
Well, the two
Back
of
in
us,
the 8 days,
the two of us have mostly rallied against most of these free trade agreements because they've basically put American workers in competition in places where the people, their wages, their daily wages or their hourly wages are significantly lower. So we're at a natural disadvantage. So the only benefit comes to the countries that have the lowest pay wages.
Yes. And the humanist in me, and I just want to make this clear, the humanist in me says we should do all we can to benefit countries that have, worse trade deals. So, for example, if you're making $1 an hour and now you can make $2.50, you're fixing a lot of things, right, for them, but you're not doing the best that you could do for them. And so the company makes billions of dollars, and yet the other part of the economy gets to make a small fraction of money. I don't agree with that side of it, but I do agree that we should be working with other countries to get rid of their third-party status.
Globalization isn't inherently a bad thing, but we need to work to get everyone raising their quality of life. If that's a basic side effect of globalization, then I'm okay with it. But a lot of times it's exploiting the people who will take the least amount of money to make something, and that feels sick.
And that's why I've honestly campaigned aggressively against NAFTA, even since I was fucking 19 years old. I mean, that's just, NAFTA has been something I have been very anti well before I was even an established Democrat or anything. That's one of the things I latched onto because I didn't understand why we couldn't just sell things cheaper, make a little bit less money on the top end, and call it a day. Because when I look at these corporations that make billions of dollars, it wants me to move to socialism because it's like, yeah, I'm good for you. Good, I'm glad that the people at the top are making out, but the people in the middle aren't. Oh, and now we aren't going to take care of other countries? I'll tell you what. You don't want to pay me $30 an hour, pay me $25 an hour, take that $5 an hour, and figure out how you're going to invest it in another country. I'm okay with that. I'll make a little bit less money to help the lower income people out. I'll make a little bit less money to help other countries out. And so I'll be honest, NAFTA has been a big stickler with me. But the problem is the same thing with when we talk about our war intervention. I'm anti-war. Yep. Not always been, but I am definitely anti-war now. But you can't just pull out. It doesn't work like that. You can't just pull out of NAFTA because it'll affect a lot. And for example, the company I work for, if he fucks everything up and adds these huge tax ratio for importation of all these goods, the company I work for could easily go under. And you know what? They're not going to go, maybe all these, 20 plants I closed down in the United States, maybe I'm going to reopen them. I'm going to go ahead and reopen these and bring the labor back. They're not going to do that. That's not what's going to happen.
Well, the whole idea for a lot of the things that he's talking about is like break down the trade agreements, break down the TPP, break down NAFTA, and start making these new agreements. But what he's basically saying is that the only agreement that he will accept is one that accepts America as the major beneficiary. We are going to win no matter what, because winning is what winners do. Win-win, #winner. I mean, I get it. You want to win. This is how you want to set up the rest of the world, but that's not how politics works. It's difficult. You need to find a nice blend where everyone can kind of get a little bit. We all need to benefit a little bit. And when it comes to the global communication, global world and everything, you can't just attack. It can't be all offensive. We have to compromise. We have to find a place where everyone can benefit a little bit. Because the way Donald Trump sets it up is, okay, if I'm not winning at all, I declare bankruptcy and remove everything from this company. Well, you can't do that with a country. You can't do that with people. And so it's going to be interesting to see what he does when it comes to the difficulties of, if he wants to say, sure, we'll renegotiate these agreements. Well, when you renegotiate, it's not, I get all the benefits, and if you don't trust, or if you don't take my terms, I'm just going to remove everything. Because that's going to ruin a lot of really great deals for a lot of countries, or a lot of companies and countries that are involved in these agreements. Yep. It's way more complicated than people expect.
Yep. He wants to get rid of TPP. I think you and I don't even need to discuss this. I think we both agree.
Obama just stopped. He stopped it completely. They stopped pushing for it. They're not even trying to fast track it anymore. They just said it's done.
Yep. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
Not really.
He wants to get rid of, or he wants to label China as a currency manipulator. I'm kind of okay with that.
They're going to have to prove that they're not guilty. That's the big thing.
Yes.
It's an accusation, and economists say it's possible. They have to prove their innocence, really.
Yep. And see, that's where I'm at, too. Like, I don't want to label them something, but there should be an investigation into that.
And the UN is currently working on that.
Are they? Okay, well, then I don't know why we would change anything we're doing. But anyway, so as long as somebody's looking into it, that's all I care. He will direct the Secretary of Commerce to identify all foreign trading abuses. I don't have
Really?
a problem with that, except for he's part of that.
Wait,
So-
all foreign trade abuses
that are unfairly impacting American workers. See, I
so
left that
all the
last
people
part
that
off
made
'cause he only
his
cares
Make
about
America Great
Yes.
hats in China.
Yeah, yes. So we'll see. I can't comment on that because he's given zero detail on that. He wants to lift the restriction on the production of $50 trillion worth of job-producing American energy reserves, including shale, oil, natural gas,
Oh,
and
man.
clean coal. I'm anti that, so fuck you. You want to make money on your energy? Go fuck yourself. Find a goddamn green way to do this. Because
the fact that clean coal is an oxymoron in
It
and of
is,
itself,
yeah.
and then the
Jesus.
fact that the Koch brothers are probably, neck deep in Trump right now. I guarantee you, they're all up in there.
He also wants to lift the roadblocks and allow vital energy infrastructure projects like the Keystone Pipeline to move forward.
So you mean the roadblocks, as in the Native American people that are in the way?
Well, he claims it's the Obama-Clinton administration.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah, that's
So
what he claims.
The Trump administration is just going to make sure there's no Native American people. It's just pro
they're
smallpox blankets across the board.
he's supporting Trans Canada, man, because they're eager to start work on the pipeline between the two countries. I don't know. I'm anti this, but
Have you seen Leo's new movie?
No.
I highly recommend you should. Man, I can't remember. I watched it with my wife the other day. It's really, really great. Well, go to the next segment. I'm gonna find the name of this movie.
All right. He wants to cancel billions of dollars in U.S. climate change programs and use the money to fix America's water and environmental system. All right. So first off, they fact check this. The U.S. government does not give billions of dollars to the UN. The U.S. government gives $10 million a year. They give $10 million a year to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change because of a 1992 global treaty signed by none other than George W. Bush.
Yeah.
Some of the money helps support the Intergovernmental Panel, a scientific organization that collects research on climate change.
Thanks, George.
Yes,
we
so
appreciate
there
your
you
help.
go. Thank you, George. Thank you, Bush. You did something good for once. But
Well, this is
okay,
Bush
and-
Senior, as far as I know.
yeah, but that's fine. He still did get something good. I don't.
He
give a
went
shit. It's a Bush.
skydiving at like 95. Cheers to
God.
that guy. He's not dead.
In 2014, Obama said that the U.S. intends to contribute $3 billion to the Green Climate Fund as part of a pledge by the developed nations to help less developed nations deal with effects on climate change. The UN then promised to raise a total of $100 billion a year for that fund, and they will start dispersing the money in 2020. If President Bush pledged $2 billion for climate aids to developing countries. So Bush sent money. Bush Sr. approved things. I mean, so he wants to kind of go against both party lines. I don't see how he's going to be able to do that, personally. I don't think that's going to happen. But the biggest problem is he's lying to people. It's not a billions of dollars, dude. We don't give billions of dollars to the UN nations right now. We want to contribute a lump sum, and we want to be part of the UN. And so, in some aspects, he's right. There is billions of dollars that could be saved in some aspects. But right now, we're not donating that. Right now, we're at 10 million. And so, my biggest problem is that if you want to do that, I disagree with you for defunding that because you don't have a reason to defund it. Keep funding it. If you want to defund something, defund part of the military so that you can afford to do this. So if you want to reduce costs, my opinion, and this is a very non-interventionalist opinion, which what he's asking for is opposite of that. I mean, he's saying, I want to be non-interventionalist to the point where I don't want to be part of the world. I'm saying we should be interventionalist only in the aspect of being able to guide people in nonviolent ways.
Yeah, intervention doesn't have to be regime change for countries that we don't like the way they're running the game.
Yes, and this is a good way to do that.
Yeah, we talk about, well, you just mentioned Trump says that we're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. Hey, the U.S. budget in 2015 was $3.8 trillion. That's a pretty big chunk of money, right? Well, in 2014, $5.3 billion was the U.S. foreign aid. That's it. 5.3. Well, 3.8, that's 3,800 billion. So 5.8 billion was the foreign aid. That's a pretty small amount. That's not us throwing all of our money towards all these other countries who really need our help. You know what is? 54% of that, $598.5 billion went to our military. Go figure, huh?
Yep.
So if you want to reduce international affairs, all this difficulty that we've got, you're not going to be looking at reductions when it comes to our foreign aid and us helping everybody out. It's going to be us reducing the fact that we have the largest military than almost all of the rest of the world combined. Yep. That's where reductions are going to happen.
The next one is he's going to rescind and cancel every unconstitutional executive action or memorandum issued by Obama. Now, that's a lot, right?
Who decides if it's unconstitutional?
Exactly. We don't know
this. Supreme Court that he's about to ruin?
Yep. So he's talking probably, and this is just an estimation, mainly about the DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and the green cards, and the deportation. And we don't know whether he's just going to allow them to expire, or if he's going to start fucking evicting people from the United States. This is troubling right here. And this is unseen what's going to happen. That is troubling. The next one is he's going to begin the process on selecting a replacement for the judges. He has two lists. Two lists of judges. So it's not clear, and I don't want to get into them right now.
No, we can't. We literally can't. The list is too big. They're going to be breaking it down eventually to the front runners because they're massive. And by the way, if anybody's interested, the movie that I mentioned a bit ago, Before the Flood, Leo DiCaprio's new movie, highly recommended. Great explanation of what's going on as far as climate change in the world right now.
The next one, he wants to cancel all federal funding to sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities in America that have policies protecting immigrants illegally from federal immigration law, such as restricting police from turning them over to federal agents.
And all these cities have said that the police forces in these areas would not help in any kind of federal removal process.
Yeah, and he doesn't say which one federal funds he's going to withhold. But a few of the main cities are Seattle, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, and Austin. I 100% disagree with this. This is another one of those. Even though maybe it's a little bit more fringe, this is the opposite way. This is way too authoritarian for me. Fourth, he's going to begin removing more than 2 million criminal illegal immigrants from the country and cancel visas for them. I guess if they're rapists and child molesters, okay. Evict them. Get them the fuck out. They probably shouldn't be husbands anyway or fathers. But just because you're a criminal, in this, we all know that there's a lot of issues. We've talked about this. For example, you get busted with a couple of joints. You're now a criminal, right? And so I have a problem with just wanting to get rid of 2 million people who are criminals. We need to look at this a lot more. Now, in all fairness, Obama has had kind of a war on this as well. It's not just Trump that has said this. But again, I disagree with that.
Well, the Obama administration has removed approximately 3 million people as far as, removing people from immigrations and deporting them and stuff. So it's actually a higher number than the presidencies before him. He has increased the number of these types of things. And Mexican repatriation, they call it. Repatriation was something that happened from 1929 to 1936. There was a mandate carried out by American authorities, and it took place without due process. So we're looking at stuff like the Abu Ghraib, where people were just deported, thrown into prison, and hey, there's no due process for you. The Magna, what is it? It's not Magna Carta. There's another government page that had basically gave people the right to due process. That was foregone, and we essentially violated the basic human rights of a large number of Mexican people living in the United States in the Mexican repatriation. And we basically
like
said we're
the
sorry.
concentration camps almost.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. We did it to the
camps.
Japanese during the concentration camps in the World War II era, but we in 2005, the state of California passed an official apology act to those who were forced to relocate to Mexico. We're talking like police forces rounding up and paddy wagon type stuff. Like this was bad. And, the United States, it's from 500,000 to 2 million people were just thrown in a van and kicked the hell out of the country. This is what Trump is proposing, people.
And he wants to suspend immigration as well from terror-prone countries. So he's going to put a moratorium on, basically anybody that comes from a Muslim-esque country. And I disagree with that too.
How do you pick what?
He's just going to say fuck everybody. That's what he's basically saying. He's saying our vetting system can't work, therefore just ban everybody.
So what about an incredibly racist, white nationalist Christian who wants to come in the United States and regrow the Nazi party into a major political party?
Do they come from Syria? No.
Maybe if
it's okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if that's what they are and they're coming from any place but Syria. Okay, cool, whatever.
Yep, another area I disagree. Now we move on to some tax relief and simplification, right? An economic plan is designed to grow the economy 4% every year to create 25 million new jobs, reduce massive tax reductions, and reform. And basically, the largest reductions will be the middle class. A middle-class family with 2 children will get a 35% tax cut, right?
What?
So that's large, except for the fact that he goes on to say the number of brackets will be reduced from 7 to 3. You're gonna have 3 tax brackets now. So for you and me, that'll probably benefit a little bit.
I don't know. I'm gonna guess we're gonna be thrown down.
No, we'll be in the middle one.
You think we'd be in the middle one?
But then he says this. He says, well, I'm going to lower business rates by 35 to 15%. And the trillions of dollars of the American corporate money overseas can now be brought back at a 10% rate.
Wow.
So he's going to reduce the business tax to 15% and eliminate estate taxes. That's what he's going to do. Where is he going to... All this money we're getting, what is he going to do to make it up? Where is that money?
He's basically reducing funding for the government by a significant margin. And what he's thinking is going to happen is that all these companies are going to bring all kinds of plants to the United States because corporate taxes are so low that they'll start paying people at a decent living wage. And we've seen trickle-down economics in the past, and it doesn't quite work this way. So if he does get this passed, we will see firsthand what it tastes like to live in a country that trickle-down economics fails.
Yep. He then talks about offshore drilling. I don't care about that. I disagree with him. He wants to talk about American energy and infrastructure, and he wants to allow private investments through tax incentives. I don't agree with that at all. I don't have time to even get into that one. That one just pisses me off. Yeah. Then he wants to talk about school of choice. He wants to redirect educational tax dollars to give parents the right to send their kids to a public, private, charter, magna, religious, or home school of choice.
Well,
fuck you.
Did anybody not expect a voucher system from a Republican supermajority? I mean, seriously.
And in all fairness, Gary Johnson fucking supported the shit out of that in his governing state.
Well, that's why he was just a Republican with the bong. That's all he was.
And so, he is going to expand vocational technical educations.
He says he will.
I do agree with that.
I don't think he will.
I don't think he will either, but if he does, I'm okay with that because that will give some starting out people some more money. And if you don't want to go to college, you cannot have to worry about earning $8-9 an hour for the rest of your life.
Well, it's actually a really good benefit to society to have more people trained in the skilled trade.
Yes.
But we shouldn't be trading that for everyone working in, slave wage jobs.
So now,
I don't know.
It's funny because where is he going to get the money for this, right? Where is he going to get the money? He's going to have to take it out of the public schools, which are going to weaken our public schools, one of the two. Or
cut a ton of them, so it'll be like 9 schools per
yes.
state.
And if he's going to cut taxes on the richest elites and the richest corporations, he's already cutting money. So he's going to cut money there. He's going to cut money here. And now I'll be honest, this is a little bit more of my anti-Republicanness that comes in here, right? This is not all just Trump. This is not just Trump going, hey, this is me, right? I'm good. I know what I do. And,
This is pretty
this
standard
is a Republican, yes. So we have to be careful, Hannah. We can't just go, well, this is a Trumpism. We have to be careful and say, okay, this is not as much just a Trumpism as this is a
big business.
Republican, big business type thing.
Yeah.
He then talks about how he's going to repeal and replace Obamacare. He talked about this. But then,
in the same breath,
a couple of days later, he's going to leave in place some base level things like the Medicare expansion. He's not going to take away insurance from some of the lowest paid citizens, which is a big concern for me because I have a friend that would suffer from this. And in the closing remarks, I'll talk about this in closing remarks. But, I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So he is going to repeal Obamacare in some form, but he also said he won't repeal it until he knows what he'll replace it with. So really in the first 100 days, they're going to have to come up with something to do this. They're going to have to. Otherwise, he's not going to sustain it. It will be unsustainable. Moving on, he talks about Affordable Child Care and Elder Care Act that allows Americans to deduct child care and elder care from their taxes. We already have this, but he's going to make it bigger. I don't disagree with this, and he's going to create matching contributions for low-income families. I agree with that 100%. But where is he going to get the money from? Again, you cut taxes. Where the fuck are you going to get the money from, man?
I know where he's going to get it from. He thinks that we're going to get all of this benefit from trickle-down economics. And this guy has got businesses that have declared bankruptcy more times than you can freaking count. And that's what we're going to get. We're going to get, oh shit, well, my choice didn't succeed, so I guess we'll declare bankruptcy on America and start over on Monday. Doesn't work that way, pal.
It doesn't. He says he's going to end illegal immigration and fund and construct a wall on the southern border and then force Mexico to pay for it. Mexico's president has already told him, have a middle finger. Fuck off.
The current president, past presidents, and all kinds of Mexican delegates have just basically told Trump to eat a shit. Yep. It's been amazing.
But that's where we have to come to some sort of a conclusion, folks. We have to come to what we're going to do to end the show, right? And that's kind of how I want to end it. He talks about a wall. Since he's been president-elect, he has not. That has not come up since he's been president-elect. But I wanted to close the show out by just a small little rant, right? Just a small little thing. Because I feel people voted for Trump because they vote Republican. They felt that the ideals of the party outweighed the ideals of the person representing it. The same could be said for those of us supporting Hillary. And I can empathize with that, right? Hell, on this podcast, even before the election was over, we were saying very similar things. But my concerns are different. The concerns mentioned by Trump and his supporters are different than those of the Hillary supporters. Sure, we share common themes, but the direction and how we get to that end of the memes is a lot different. I mean, I have heard Trump supporters talk about economy, about jobs, about the middle class, but as they talk about these things, what do they do? What do they do right there? They don't concern themselves with the minorities. They point themselves back at each other, right? They do not concern themselves with minorities, and they push the agenda of themselves first. So I'm concerned about the privilege running rampant. I'm concerned about what happens when the people of color and minorities have to watch the hate that they've seen for the past year and a half now come into play for the next 4 years. I am concerned that as I have a friend who relies on Obamacare for medical reasons to save their lives, who could lose that. I've watched a candidate who has used fear and hate as a platform to win and has promised to do non-humanistic things. They've promised to do things for this country that I don't agree with. So yes, the reasons for you and me being upset, for us to be upset, between us Hillary supporters and Trump supporters and third-party supporters, it's all different. Right? It is. It's different. But the reasons for being scared are different. Has both parties been scared before? Yes. Have we still gone on and the country not ended? Yes. Should we give Trump a chance? Well, I'm not going to tell anyone that they have to make that choice. I mean, it isn't like for 4 years the Republicans did everything in their power to not be bipartisan and to block aids all over the place for the Democrats. Is it hypocritical for them to tell us that we now need to give them a chance when 8 years of stalemate has happened? Come on! How do you not see this? Yes, it's hypocritical. So I'm not going to go show my kids that the stocks are doing good, and this is a good indicator of Trump. I'm going to hug my kids. I'm going to tell them that everything's going to be okay. I'm going to ask them if their friends are okay today. I'm going to encourage them to go read history and civics books. I'll not let criticism, and I'll continue to criticize the same way we criticized Hillary. I'm going to criticize Trump. Because we did that for Hillary. We didn't let her get away with anything. I know there are some policies that I'm going to have to work with Trump. So will you. So will everybody in this nation if we want to continue as a nation and not plunge into anarchy. So I'll allow for him to take control as is required through the Constitution. But please, Trump supporters, don't tell us to calm down and think that, oh, it's all going to be okay. Because the reasons for why we fear and the reasons that we are upset are different. And I have a lot of friends that are in fear of what will happen to them. We just talked about it. We just talked about the immigration and about the ban on Muslim immigrants. That's a valid concern. So if you want us to support Trump and reach across the aisle, first, please remember that we are hurting, we are scared, and we love nothing more than to ensure safety to help America be safer for those who live there. Please make sure that you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on Spreaker and on iTunes, and follow us on Patreon. And we'll be back next week with more
listening to a presentation
Cellar Door Skeptics.
Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.